From the very first day I started at the Fugard, I'd heard about King Kong.
King Kong is a very special production and somewhat at the core of the Fugard. Eric held on to those rights for many years before he felt ready to pull the trigger.
The putting together of the team for King Kong was quite a thing. We knew that we had to get the right people involved, and Eric was adamant it must be the right person. So the one person we knew immediately had to be involved was the choreographer, and that was going to be Gregory Makpoma. There's a bass player who I'd been working with for many years called Sapumzo Lukwaba, who I immediately got involved as well. We just shared the workload on this whole thing. And we needed a director. It became tricky to find that person with that vision who understood the importance of the production, but also understanding the legacy of the production at the same time, as well as what is the potential for a future for that, understanding the world stage.
Jonathan Mumby, who is a British person, came out and directed a sensational production of King Kong. He brought a level of professionalism which was remarkable to see how our local performers and design talent would engage with.
We had a team of creatives that was not only diverse in terms of their nationality and races, but also skill set, attaching younger creatives with older creatives. I mean, this was something that King Kong really focused on. Jonathan Mumby had Mdu Kweyama next to him. Charles had Sapumzo. Burry had Wadad. It was this really wonderful example of the thing we were trying to do, and all encased in this long-term project that Eric attempted.
King Kong as a project was always close to Eric's heart. It was something he told me about on day one when I came in, and it was fraught with all sorts of challenges. It wasn't easy, but ultimately the celebration of the South African talent and the work that those original creatives made in the late 50s was undeniable. It was something of a coup for the Fugard.
I'm happy that we were able to present it to the country. I think it's an important piece, everything aside, to have had stage time.
What it showed is that we can do these things with the right team, with the right budget, obviously, but also with the right intention. You can look at the incredible work that South Africa has produced, you can revive it, or you can make anew, or you can find the perfect blend of the two.
We celebrated South African talent. We were determined that we could recreate or create anything that anybody else could in the world. So those early days of producing theatre at the Fugard was filled with excitement.
The Fugard expanded rapidly, I think not even quickly, rapidly. And one of those expansions was the reinvention of the Sigrid Rousing studio, which was a rehearsal space, and then became this intimate theatre space.
The studio was an incredibly important venue because of new work that we had commissioned, outside rentals, people that were looking for space.
First production that would run in the studio was A Number, directed by Jonathan Mumby, which is how we met him. The West father and son duo were cast in that. Gosh, I remember working unbelievably hard at that time, trying to convert an old church space into a theatre space with nothing in it, and having to bring in all the elements was massively challenging.
Beautiful room, wonderful atmosphere in that. And also the distressed walls were kept distressed, and there's windows. And every time I did my show on stage there, I tried to keep in the geography of those windows and the geography of the room.
The idea was to keep it as flexible as possible. So the seating was designed in a way that it could be taken out, it could be turned around. We did that with I See You, Die Laaste Karretjie Graf. So there were many productions that actually didn't just play sort of end on, which is the traditional way of doing it.
The studio opened up wonderful possibilities for offerings that were more suited to something more intimate than the theatre space. It was ingenious to open up that space as well, and not just for theatre, but musical performances as well. It was a space that just like made communion possible.
Like the idea always was at the Fugard, and this was an amazing idea, was that the quality you saw downstairs in the main, you would see that quality upstairs as well. I did 2 plays in a row, the Kingmakers at the Alexander Bar, and then Dan Galloway saw The Pervert Laura. And he said, listen, it deserves a world-class stage, this.
Eric and I spoke at length about making available opportunities for playwrights, for South African playwrights. It was the beginning of a program of investing into local talent.
I got a call from the Fugard, and they said, we'd like to pay you to write a play. And I said, oh, that's amazing. That's the first time I think anyone had ever offered to buy a play. And it was great, so I wrote it. They liked it enough for Dan and the team to then speak to me and said, but how about not just one? How about we make you the first writer in residence? And that, as any playwright will tell you, is a life-changing event.
And the idea behind it was to give that particular writer at that time the space to be exactly that, a writer. What it morphed into, once we had done the first iteration with Louis, was instead of one writer, we decided we wanted to open it up rather. So we actually brought on 4 writers to do individual scripts for us, which was very exciting because we were starting to commission more and more South African work. But looking back on it now, I feel quite proud that that space was made available. And then subsequently for writers like Amy Jefter, Nadia Davids, Mike van Graan, who for my very first season as artistic director, we were going to produce their plays. One of them went on to be produced at the Baxter, Hold Still. So thankfully some of the scripts have had life and have gone on to be produced.
Eric, being an award-winning film producer, made it clear that he wanted us to find a way to present specific theatrical or art house films in the Fugard Theatre. So there was an investment into the projection and cinema equipment. We put in a beautiful Dolby surround sound system. We put in a proper film projector. We put in a proper drop-down cinema screen.
It started to become this really big event on a Sunday.
You could come in at 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning and watch 3 hours of the best ballet that's available in the world. And you can do that in the comfort at the Fugard.
You didn't have to go to the mall. With us, you could have a glass of bubbles, you could have popcorn, you could have a beautiful cappuccino, and sit in a beautiful old building, which is a theatre.
The trouble that was taken by management for the best sound and the best visuals, because this is precious stuff. You know, you can't watch it on your phone. You need to watch it in that space.
So the Bioscope was a real jewel in the crown, I think, for us, and it really set us apart from other theatres.
We always strive to bring everybody into the theatre because, as we know, the theatre was always a privileged space.
Everybody in South Africa is, obviously very aware of how inaccessible theatre truly is to a vast majority of South Africans. And Eric and the team at the Fugard worked towards meaningful ways of bringing people in from our communities who would otherwise never be able to afford a trip to the theatre to come in and engage with the Fugard. Eric, by way of his philanthropy, made 2 rows of seats available at every musical production for certain nights in the week, and he would pay for the safe transport of those people to and from the theatre.
And these were youngsters that were busy in community theatre, and youngsters that has never been in a theatre.
And it was brilliant. I mean, we did it for 2-3 years. I mean, I don't know how many hundreds of people who maybe would never have seen something like a King Kong or a West Side Story. And hopefully that sparked something that they could then go on and become like the next big theatre maker in South Africa. Another thing we did was to try and incorporate the deaf community in the Fugard. So we worked with jazz hands. And for particular productions where we could make it work, is we would have live sign language where we would work with these interpreters and they would actually sign the show while it was happening.
In terms of transformation in South Africa, in terms of poverty alleviation, there were many little programs that were started and run at the Fugard which would dive into that world, but we did it without press release.
I was given the opportunity to create new pieces for the stage. and that's invaluable. It's very seldom that you would find somebody financing a building and productions like that to the extent that Eric did.
Without Eric, there would not be a Fugard. Without someone who paid for everything. And the final number is north of 300 million rand. Eric was never in it to make money. What he wanted to do was create a space in a historically relevant area that would allow for world-class theatre to take place and for important stories to be told. I don't know when it happened last in South Africa, and I don't know when it's going to happen again.
The vision that Eric had and the mission that he wanted to accomplish was that it would become a space that would operate without discrimination, that it would be a space that would celebrate a common humanity, a place where people would come together, feel welcomed, and I really enjoyed working towards those, bringing in an energy of positivity, of optimism.
It was a space of hope. It was a space of possibility.
Over the 10 years, the Fugard produced over 60 productions, employed more than 2,000 people meaningfully. We must have had hundreds of thousands, if not 1 million audience members come and join us over that time. So many highlights and so many sadnesses. We lost friends there, but mostly just a place of people gathering, people gathering safely, people celebrating what Eric had created. While most people didn't understand it, many did, and they got it, and they got that what he had given us was a gift. And it's a great sadness that that gift is gone.